coming, everybody. I really appreciate it. Yep, whatever you need to
Testing.
do. You do what you need to do. Thank you so much for coming to this panel discussion. It's part of Sustainability Awareness Week here at FIT. And we're going to be talking about the intersection of size inclusion and sustainability, specifically from a small business owner's lens. If you do not know who I am Mallorie Dunn. I'm a professor here at FIT. I'm also a small business owner, run the inclusive customizable company Smart Glamour for the past decade. And I like to bring inclusion into the conversation anywhere I can, but specifically when we're talking about sustainability. So first things first, we're going to have our lovely panelists introduce themselves quickly, and then we will jump into the conversation. So we'll just start here and head on down.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out. My name is Sue Rock, and I'm the director for Sue Rock Originals and Sue Rock Originals Everyone. Basically, the focus of Sue Rock Originals is to create beautiful styles that fit people's style, personality, and soul sizes 1X through 6X. So we're designing into people's greatness, looking at the plus-size professionals, plus-size creatives, to give them the clothing that they need that really expresses who they are and expresses their character when they're going out professionally and also personally.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Oh, you have to get really close. I'm Tamara. I'm the founder and owner of Tamara Malas. Founded it in 2018. Just opened a store this year in my 5th year of business. It's been a roller coaster. Happy to be here and talk about this. So important.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Wray, and my brand is Wray. Pretty simple. I've had my company for the past decade, and we are sizes extra, extra small through 6X. I opened my first storefront in Lower East Side about 2 years ago. We're a contemporary women's wear brand, but we're also for everybody. Yeah, that's about it.
Amazing. Thank you so much, everyone. So some of you answered a little bit of this first question, but really the main thing that I'd love for you to chat about a little bit is how you decided to start your brand. How did you even go about starting a brand? And what was your background before starting your brand that allowed you to do this work? And we'll pop back in the same order again. Yeah.
Okay.
And just put the mic a little closer to your face.
No problem. Mine is a story of, I think synchronicity would be the best way to say it. It was 2006, 2007, and the garment industry was in decline. At that point, I was married, and my husband was an extraordinary tailor. And this strange new website called Craigslist had just started in New York City, right? And so on Craigslist, they had this part of Craigslist that had free. And the only things that would come up often were free sewing machines, free fabric, and free pianos for everyone who's trying to get it out of their new apartments. Yes. So we'd look and see free fabric. And both of us were of an age that we could see the value of free fabric. And so in turn would go to pick it up, thinking that it would be maybe 2 or 3 garbage bags and not knowing about the decline of the garment industry. And so we would come to a space maybe this size and say, okay, we're here. And they'd look at us and say, oh, you guys are great. Listen, no one else showed up. You can have the whole entire wall over there. And so began our journey creating. One of the reasons that I was able to be successful at that time, 2006, 2007, was it was also an influx of young people coming from outside of New York. Many of them were women. Many of them were going in for either architecture or attorneys or that kind of thing, and were not able to find success in their lives at that point, but they had liquid capital. And they were able to buy or rent or lease storefronts in Brooklyn, in the Lower East Side, various aspects of Brooklyn that hadn't had storefronts there before. And it was there I was able to do what I did maybe back in the late 80s, which was go door to door to these businesses with pieces that my husband was creating, simple pieces, A-line skirts, little tunic dresses, and see if they liked the dozen we were able to make with these fabrics we were getting that were being offloaded from the declining garment industry. And it was successful. It was successful because they shopped. It was successful because those businesses were thriving, right? And They saw value in what I did, and they were more eclectic. So we're talking about the flow that happens in a neighborhood of New York where it goes coffee shop, clothing store, bar, and then Starbucks. You know what I'm saying? So it goes that route. I was at the clothing store part. And great, because there were maybe 5 to 7 different stores on different avenues that we were able to be with in our business. Very briefly, the influx of raw materials happened so abundantly that it made sense to do something a little bit more generous with it. And so we created a nonprofit called Sioux Rock Originals Everyone. So now we're talking 2008, 2009. The crash happens. People are looking for what to do with their time. And we got volunteers. And it was this organization where we would make new items for survivors of domestic violence who would leave. Because there was such an abundance of fabric. These were all skills many people already had. And it felt like a great way to kind of, inject those skills back into people's families and their lives. So Sioux Rock Originals Everyone, has always been connected to that sustainability piece of the raw materials that come from the garment industry that they're discarding and are available for all of us to use and enjoy.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That gives like a foundation.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, of course, of course.
Thank you, Sue.
You're welcome.
I feel like I have to say that. I'm in the middle. So my journey goes back to school. I went to school at SAIC in Chicago. I started there at 2007. And for me, it really started with having great teachers and great professors. And, you know, the kind that give you goosebumps when they just say the most simple little sentence and you just think, gosh, I want to do that. I want to be that. And in particular, SAIC, you go in without a major. And that excited me to be able to do a bit of everything, photography, sculpture, and specifically fibers, which was a bit of weaving, a bit of, you know, all sorts of things. You get it. And I bonded really closely with a professor my freshman year who said something like, you know, you don't want to be the one going out on the weekends. You want to be the one like always making work. You just want to like make work in your free time. You just got to make work, make work, make work. And it really stuck with me. And I was like, anyway, a little unrelated. Went on to switch into the fashion program because I realized, okay, I'm just going to be learning a bunch of skills and maybe graduate with something that's not super productive. Switched into fashion. It was genuinely in my bones and in my blood from a super young age. I just never felt worthy or like it was something I was supposed to or allowed to do in the body that I was in. I started to sort of gain weight in college. And so it was a time where I was also discovering who I am, what I want to do. So it was really important for me to make that shift and say, I'm going to own this. I really want to study fashion. So that was in 2008. And met a professor there in school, Shane Gabier, of Creatures of the Wind, and began working with him closely with his brand and would travel back and forth for Fashion Week in school and, you know, pay my own way and just kind of be happy to be around. They would use my hotel room for model castings, and eventually they were up for a CFDA Vogue Fashion Fund Award, and they ended up being the runner-up. They didn't win, but just being a part of such a small business where it's literally your professor and you and one other and his partner, and you're just kind of making things happen, was really exciting. And I saw what it could be like to be part of such a small team, really get my hands dirty in all different parts of things. So after school, I went to London. I worked at a magazine called Dazed and Confused. Super exciting to be a part of styling. Message here being, I think it's really important to be well-rounded. In school, we're often taught you have to pick one thing, and we often end up finding out the hard way that it's never going to be one thing. You're going to end up switching or finding a new passion or falling in love with something else or mistakenly ending up in another, you know, school or another passion or another major. So working for Creatures of the Wind really like excited me, but I also was like, wow, I can't wear any of this. And it took me 3 or 4 years of working for them and getting really exhausted in the industry because at an entry-level position, all the work kind of ends up on your shoulders, whether you accept it or not. And this is still in the height of fashion and what it was, and working fashion weeks and not sleeping, and being on fashion week diets that you choose not to participate in, but you're put on because your boss is on them, stuff like that. And I was just like, okay, I don't really want to contribute to this anymore. How can I shift and contribute to my own community? Just as basic as being able to wear the things that I'm working on and have my hands on. So I left that job and was feeling a little bit lost, as some of us do. And it was sort of like, is grad school my next step, or am I going to jump off a cliff and try doing something on my own? And I actually didn't get into grad school, and it really hurt my ego. And then I threw away my ego and said, I went to my sister's wedding, and I was in between jobs, and I didn't want to tell people I was in between jobs. So they were asking me, oh, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm going to start my own plus-size fashion line. And when I got home, I realized I had told, 50 extended family members that I was going to start a fashion line. And I said, oh, shit, I guess I better do that. So it's hard to, nothing's linear, but I will say that was when everyone sort of has a moment where they're like, I'm either going to do it or I'm not. And you realize that it's such a big jump. And I don't think if I hadn't had the accountability of telling so many people that I was sincerely close to, if I would have ended up doing it, because we end up saying it's not the right time or I'm not ready. And 2 months after my sister's wedding, I opened the LLC and just kind of got started. So that was in 2017, and I launched the brand in 2018. And I just wanted to say, because I missed it earlier, I launched as an exclusively plus-size label, which was really important to me to give back to the community that I felt like I wasn't really a part of and wanted to be. And then eventually now I've opened up the size range because I realized I wanted to dress all my friends, but also like someone like a sister. I've never been able to wear the same thing as my sister, which sounds so stupid. Why would you want to match with your sister? But like last holiday season, I was able to gift both of my sisters a sweater, and my mom was like, wow, I've never seen you all in the same thing. And just a special moment just to be able to, it's not about size, but just like kind of being able to contribute to the people that you want to contribute to. So that's how that happened.
Amazing. Thank you. And Wray?
Wow. Wow, that was really great. So my journey started a little bit different. I went to school at CCA, and then I did extended studies at Parsons, Paris. I moved to New York City afterwards. I got a fashion job right at the beginning of 2008, and then everything crashed. And I was immediately fired, and everybody lost their job. It was a time. And then I started to work for Issey Miyake at their sales floor. And at the same time, I was working at Issey Miyake 5 days a week. I was interning at Rachel Comey under Rachel herself for 2 days a week. So that's 7 days a week. I was working and interning, as one does in 2008. Hopefully no one does that now. Please don't do it. I don't recommend it. Yeah, and after that, I started a company with a good friend of mine from college. It was our first clothing company, but it was a little bit of a weird time to start a company. Like during the recession, we were doing contemporary women's wear, high end, like things that were like in the 800s, like kind of like runway stuff. Got a lot of traction. We had some stores in like Japan and in Paris. We got some great write-ups, but ultimately it wasn't sustainable. So I moved into fashion tech after that, which is an ambiguous industry that is still ambiguous to this day. And I could talk all about it, but I won't. And I made a wardrobe organizing app, like kind of like the one on Clueless, if you like know that one, where she's like going through the. So I founded that with 2 other people, and I really just missed design. I missed designing clothing. I missed being creative. So I started Wray in 2015. My husband at the time was an artist, and I was part of this group of like art design, art design kids, which at the time we really didn't have a lot of money, and we were. One of us like worked at a bar, and we would get our food from that person at the bar, and we would, go to Chinatown and get our vegetables, and we were just like trying to survive in New York City, to be honest. And now, after about 15 years, I would say that we're all pretty successful in our fields, which is really nice. Just to know that that can happen, that you can kind of start from nothing and then work really hard and, be in the creative industry and grow into something. So yeah, in about 2018, I extended my sizes. So we did extra small through extra large, and then we extended up to 6X. And that was quite a journey for me, especially as a straight-sized person. I fell in love with the industry even more because the fashion industry is a strange beast. It's not always the nicest industry. It's not always the most inclusive industry. And I fell into this place where I got to meet all of these incredible, amazing, beautiful people that were into fashion just like I was into. And it made me fall in love with my work, like in a very deep and profound way. I think that's the best way to describe it. And when we extended our sizes, we weren't really thinking about, what we were doing with it. Just that we needed to do it. And I had no idea that there was this amazing community around it. And I feel so grateful, and I feel so happy to be part of a community and to be designing for people that are just exceptional, lovely human beings. I'm lucky, truly.
Amazing. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is sustainability, right? It's interesting. It's one of those words that's a little bit of a catch-all. It can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. There's a definition of it that was actually created by the UCLA Sustainability Committee that I love a lot, which is the integration of environmental health, social equity, and economic vitality in order to create thriving, healthy, diverse, and resilient communities for this generation and generations to come. The practice of sustainability recognizes how these issues are interconnected and requires a systems approach and an acknowledgement of complexity. And I think the reason that I gravitate to that definition so much is because of the huge emphasis on systems and complexity. I think sometimes with big, scary problems, we want quick answers. We want a magic button. And the reason it's such a big problem is because there is no magic button. We all have to do what we can with what we have where we are. So my next question to the panelists is, some we've touched on slightly, but how does sustainability tie into your brand? What does it mean to you? And how do you strive for it? And maybe we can switch up the order. Whoever wants to go first.
I'll start. For me, sustainability in my own business means transparency and like understanding where things come from, much like people who don't eat meat or who do eat meat. You want to know where your food and meat comes from. Something that excited me in my first collection was I had met someone through school whose family owned a knitwear company. It was her grandfather's, and before that, I believe his father's. And she was a good friend during school. And when I started the business, I reached back out because I was excited about working with family-run operations instead of, big ones. In the beginning, I was making everything in New York, but for something like knitwear, you often have to look elsewhere. So she had a family-run factory in Bolivia. And I remember we were sourcing the materials, and alpaca is very common there. And she was kind of showing me different options of different combinations. And at one point, we got to the next step, and I said, okay, I want to proceed with the alpaca, yes, in that weight, yes, and all through photos and through Zoom calls with her mother, who's in Bolivia. And then the next email included a photo of the animals that the fiber came from. And I just think it's so cool. Like, it excited me. Not that the animals were being, of course, they're not harmed in the process. They're just shaved. But these cute, sweet animals that are, in a way used for a good purpose, and doesn't harm them. But just to know the source is what I mean, was exciting. So for me, that's something that like shifted, where I said, I really want to start to know, I want to know where all my things come from. And that's important to me as a maker and as a brand. And I don't want to sell something that I don't know where it came from. So that happened really early on in business, when I said I want to make sure that I'm aware of where things are coming from. But also practicing things like closed loop production. For me, it happened sort of by mistake the first time around, where through one of my factories here in New York, I was working with sort of a production person who was like the middleman, and there must have been just an error where instead of, I think it was 20-something yards, we ordered 200. And not only did I have to deal with that financially, but you don't want to just put that to waste. So it was printed fabric, and that's an even higher cost. And I said, okay, I wasn't planning on doing anything but one style in this, and then it shifted. And I said, okay, I'm actually going to do a couple more styles, and those 3 styles sort of carried me through my business through COVID, and it was such a happy, weird mistake. And when they say you just got to make it work or make lemonade out of lemons, it ended up working out, and it was also a lesson in, I had it anyway, and it created a great product, but ultimately it was from a mistake. But those are 2 stories that I just like to tell about, mistake and sustainability. Of course, it's something I'm always thinking about, and just trying, like you said, to do your part, because you can feel like many other things in the world, like, oh, what's the difference? What does it matter? If I buy something from, a fast fashion retailer, am I really going to make much of a difference? But I think it does, and that's exactly what you were trying to say. And for me, I've always just tried to say I'm just going to make a difference in the small community that I can, and in my own little universe. And I try to think that that's enough at this stage, but always trying to be more responsible, and look into other ways to make happy mistakes, I guess.
Okay, my answer to this is like very practical, but as being in the fashion industry, I'm very, very aware that it is not a sustainable industry. We do not work in a sustainnot industry. It contributes to lots of we contribute to lots of like pollution and waste. It's not it's not the most sustainable industry. So how do you make a sustainable company, out of this unsustainable, wasteful industry? And I think the answer is, there's lots of answers. It's a multifaceted thing, but by being an independent small brand and choosing to produce smaller, we are working with factories that it's like almost impossible for us to not be sustainable, like all of us, if I'm being completely honest. The factories, like ethically, the factories that would not be good factories to work with, probably wouldn't work with any of us. We wouldn't meet any of their minimums at all. So, that right there is just like, keeping your company at a size where you're producing, you're making money, you're doing well, but you're not like a big oligopoly. You're not like a big fast fashion company producing lots of waste. And then the second answer to this question I have is a story, which is I was at a trade show because we wholesaled. When I started my business, I wholesaled. Still wholesaling a little bit, but we were doing a lot of wholesale. And I remember there was a store that came up, and they were like, "Oh, we can't buy any of your clothes because they're not vegan." Because I had some silk pieces, and they were like, were really distressed about the idea of the silkworms not doing well, the silkworms dying making the silk, like all of this. And I was like, okay, no problem. I'm not for you. I get it. And then like another store came up and they were like, you know, we only buy we only buy things like that are made in the United States. And at the time we had a factory in India and we were producing in New York. And I was looking at other factories in other places and I was like, all right, you know, like we're like not for you. And then there was another. This is a true story because it was 3 stores in a row that like this like happened to, and me and my showroom person are like sitting there like watching this go down, and we're like, are we on camera? I was like what's happening? And then the 3rd store came, and they were like, you know, we you know you have we don't have or we don't buy anything like with synthetics or something like that. So we had some synthetics. So it was like we couldn't appease the people that only wanted natural fiber, like, you know, the natural fibers weren't working for them. The people with the synthetics, that wasn't working. Like, none of it was working. So it's an interesting question because sustainability means so many different things to so many different people, stores included, consumers included. So our path that we have gone down is just to work with factories that are ethical, and like I focus on the social aspect of sustainability. So in doing that, when I started my brand, I started it in India, and I had a friend, and he had a factory in India, and I went out and I started producing my collection, and I lived with him and his family, and I started going there every 2 years for like every year for 2 months. Just living in India, like working, meeting everybody. And then I decided, you know, why not do that with every factory that we work with? So I've gone to China, I've gone to Peru, I've gone to India. I've like met the people that I work with. I've made them, you know, like show me where all of the factory workers live. We have dinner together, you know, like we hang out. So that's the way that I've chosen to go about it, is just caring about people, and the closed loop discussion is a really important one. When you produce in a country that has alpacas that are not killed, shaved alpacas, they're like alive. I did get that question actually one time too, where someone was like, are the alpacas alive? Are they okay? And I was like, no, they're just shaved. It's okay. Everything's fine. But yeah, like, you know, working with a country that has, you know, alpacas are in Peru. That's where you make alpaca sweaters. And, you know, linen is readily available in India. So that's where you make your linen goods, things like that. So that's what it means to me. And that's how I've chosen to approach it.
Wonderful. And Sue?
Thank you, Ray, for everything. Both of you, thank you both for what you shared. Sustainability is a very interesting word. With Sioux Rock Originals, I think we check off many of the boxes, right? So yes, we only use 95% of the stuff I use is from the garment industry or the interior design industry that they let go of. And we manufacture in New York. And we're focused on plus and extended plus sizes. So that means that I'm showing models that are visibly plus size. So for the sake of the news and for the sake of magazines, we are doing the sustainable thing. But what I find for me sustainability means, and I was thinking about it as folks were speaking, it requires for me as a brand, if I'm choosing to do clothing, to be very savvy and very flexible. Because for today, sustainability for me now is trying to come up with different pricing models. It's coming up with different ways for people to pay for my product, because that's sustainable for them. With everything, think about everything that Ray said. When does the brand get to be sustainably fit so they can run their brand? And nobody wants to be tight, right? But there is a part where you're thinking, well, how am I going to sustain myself as a brand? And so the sustainability question for me as a brand means being extraordinarily flexible and listening. Sustainability in the beginning might have been just using certain products. But if you really listen, oh, wait a minute, I need to check out how those products are dyed. Are they tapping into the, oh, okay, let me listen to that a little bit. Before it could be having larger sizes. Folks are like, wait, but I can't see the clothing on my size. Now it means having visibly plus size models and looking for them and making sure they're styled properly. So for me, sustainability means being very, very flexible. Currently, because of the season that we're in, as a brand, I'm really thinking about being creative with pricing models. Yeah, there's Klarna, but just thinking about what could work. What kinds of things are people doing? People have that, the business model of borrowing the clothes, right? Loaning the clothes, or just all types of things. That's a sustainability piece. Because sustainability for me means it's got to be realistic in today's world. It's got to be like really realistic. And yes, make me money, but it's got to be really realistic and include other people's thoughts and include the fact that you love the people that you're working with and that you're selling for. The sustainability has a love aspect to it because you're really trying to create a great product that sustains the human being and sustains the planet and brings in some cash. And, you know, everybody kind of feels great around that. So that's what I've been thinking about with sustainability because it's changed. Because, you know, all three of us could do all of the things that are checked off, as the both of you have mentioned, and something will happen in June of 2026 and you haven't met the bar. What are you doing? You know, so there's a flexibility piece to it that's based on a changed reality that we all are seeing. We need more. We need more support. We need more equanimity, whatever the piece is. You feel me? Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I think before I move on to the next question, I just want to say, like, I think when we talk about different positive societal aspects of businesses or clubs or societies that we're striving for, I think sometimes we can be a little hard on ourselves and hard on others, that like if you don't reach 100% of everything, then like it might as well be nothing, right? You might as well just not even do it. But the fact that we're all even in this room having this conversation, that we care about sustainability, I mean, we're already doing much more than many fashion companies and fashion designers do. So that's why I always stress on, like, you know, doing what you can with what you have where you are. Not everyone can do everything, you know. And again, it's such a big problem that there is no easy fix. So it's a combination of all these things. So I'm really glad that we touched on so many different facets of it. So the next two questions I want to split up a little bit and get a little bit more personal. So we did touch on it a little bit when we were talking about expanding sizes and why, but I'm curious to our plus size panelists here, if you could talk a little bit about your experience being a plus size consumer and deciding to enter an industry that is not, let's just put it kindly, not always so nice to you. You know, how did that impact your decision? And how do you handle that when you go into fashion spaces?
Because you saw it like up close and personal. Yeah. Yikes. But it must have been amazing though too, to be like, I'm here, yes, and
Yeah, Ray, you touched on this briefly. Just, we all know the fashion industry isn't nice, but it really wasn't nice 10 years ago. I feel fortunate. There was no specific time I wasn't bullied or nothing, you know, was ever spoken to me per se. But I remember one time somebody talking about models' bodies and saying, you know, we're really just looking for the thinnest. We're really just looking for someone who looks like a hanger. Huh. And I remember thinking, oh man, like, wow, like that's a weird way to talk about a body. But it's so matter of fact. It's so removed sometimes. It's so just connected to like showing something so that it can hopefully sell, and then it didn't, you know, so I don't know. But I think I spoke to this a bit about even just being afraid to study something that I had felt in my bones for so long but didn't feel like I was supposed to or allowed to. I often still feel insecure sometimes this is going to sound weird. Sometimes I feel like I don't look like a fashion designer. And often when people ask me what I do, I don't necessarily open with that. It's something I'm working on because I'm very proud of it. I'll talk to people that I know and care about. I love to talk, if you can't tell. It's just, you feel like, oh, I don't fit in that box, and so like, how am I going to present this to someone so that it's digestible? And I've really found I enjoy not fitting in the box, and I like surprising people. Sometimes people are like, you worked in fashion? And you're like, how did they allow you? Or, wow, you worked at a magazine, like with some of the highest, level models and stylists in the industry. And you're just like, yeah, but I didn't really face any, hate or negative commentary, but it doesn't mean you don't feel it, if that makes sense. And it might not be directed at you, but it's, as a sensitive, empathetic person, it's something you can feel without, someone could say they're not, but you might still feel a certain way. So, I've managed to, I feel, turn it into something positive, which is my own brand that really emboldens who I am as a person, and it's such an extension of myself. And I'll say one of the bigger challenges when launching was, okay, what do I call it? And I hired a whole team of people to try to help me figure out what I should call this business. And ultimately ended up with my name. And it's just really funny, but it's partially because I think in a bigger body, I didn't feel that I leveled with some of the other designers who just go by their name. And it was a really cool, empowering process to be like, no, okay, I'm just gonna, it's just my name, okay. Which is still actually a little bit uncomfortable because, Ray, I don't know if you've experienced this, but I just opened a retail store, but had pop-ups for years in the past, and people don't necessarily connect the person working in the store with who designs it. And I love surprising people and saying my name, and they're like, oh, that's you, your name, and it's just a fun moment. But yeah, I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have thoughts to add, Sue?
Just know there's a thing that happens it's so peculiar. When a person is, go ahead, yes. So when a person is plus size, larger size than whatever the straight size is, there's such a lack of clothing that one puts a great deal of effort either into styling, if that's their want, right? But if they're a degular person working, they basically find things that match, that fit, and are within their budget. And that was the norm for quite a long time. It matches, it fits, I can get out the door, let me get to what I'm doing. To the point one person was like, "Gee, you love blue. Blue is your color." I'm like, that's all they had. All they had that looked nice. And most recently, was fortunate, I mentioned before I'd gotten married. My husband was a tailor. And everything had evolved, as I shared with you, with the fabric and things. So at the point that I'm speaking about now, we're in a brick and mortar space. And now he can draft patterns, and I'm short and round. So I'm like, yeah, I'd love some things, and I'm pulling fabrics and got an idea. Let's just do a simple jersey tunic dress. It's good enough for work. Until I saw what things look like that actually fit properly. And all of a sudden, I'm not saying no to going out to events anymore. And I'm not saying no to go out to dinner afterward. Boy, I was like, that's all right. Because you never really have what's current when you're going out. And you only realize that when you go out because you've picked the best thing in the store that was there. This is what is it, Ashley Stewart has. I know this is going to, and then you go to the event and you're like, holy mother of God, no one wears these things. What am I doing here? And so I began to get these things made. And when they were made, I was like, oh, that's what I look like. Because it was never me. It was always the clothing. That's, so that experience that I had for many, many years kind of fueled what is happening now, because I kept looking. Now I'm looking at myself with the clothing on, and I'm like, it's not me, it's the clothing is cut wrong. or it's the wrong color because they chose to get the cheap fabric with the off color, off season to make whatever the items were. And so that kind of fueled my experience to try to find ways to make quality clothing, but also beautiful clothing that was contemporary, simply in a larger size that was cut properly. I think all three of us have that sensibility of, why can't people have clothing that's cut properly? So that's my backstory.
That's really amazing. I love how you almost like kind of surprised yourself once you're already in the middle of it.
It's
Which is
true.
amazing. And then for Wray, as somebody who wears straight sizes and also makes inclusive sizes, over the past decade, I get asked very often, like, why do I make clothes for everyone? Why do I care about making clothes for people that are bigger than me? You'd be surprised how many times I've asked the question. And my very quick answer is that I was never going to make clothes and then limit who could have them. That doesn't make sense in my brain. So I'm just curious if people have ever
Love that.
asked you that, and if so, or if not, what would be your response?
Yeah, people have asked me that a lot, actually. So much. And to answer your question, yes, Tamara, people are like, "You're Wray?"
Yeah.
But and my answer is that I have really like hot friends, and I want them to wear my clothes, you know, and it needs to be in their size. And as a designer, I'm thinking about like my muse is so many different people. It's like so many different body types, so many different genders, non-genders. That's who inspires me. So that's who I design for. So it's not about me, Wray, as the person. It's about designing clothing for people that, you know, like I'm thinking up in my head, and for my friends, for them to wear, and then making it accessible to everybody. Simply put.
Amazing. Thank
But
you.
I just want to ask
Yes,
you.
yes.
I just want to ask you a question. What's daunting to me is the effortlessness of why. Why? Oh well, my size is from extra. Really? Why? Like,
Right.
why? It's so effortless. That kind of carefree.
Yeah, carefree exclusion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my longer version of the answer is about kind of touches on, we live in a very fat-phobic society, and sometimes when I say that to people, they get nervous because they feel like I'm telling them personally that they're fat-phobic, right? But it's just like when you live in a society that has weird rules and structures, that seeps into you in different ways. And especially when you're someone in the fashion industry, when everywhere you look, models are small, dress forms are small, the majority of clothes stop at my size. It's what is ingrained in your brain, right? So I think that when people so nonchalantly ask me why, it's because like that's where they're coming from, right? And because my brain, who I am for whatever reason, never came from that place. That's where we butt up against each other. So now I want to kind of pivot to, basically the intersection of these things, right? Of sustainability and inclusion, and how do they hit each other? So the people on this panel I know for sure know, and I'm assuming a lot of people in this room know, but the majority of U.S. consumers are plus size. Depending where you look in the study, it's 67 to 72% of people. But also depending on where you find the study, only 12 to 18% of fashion brands make plus sizes. Additionally, and maybe this might be something you don't know, and I apologize now because it's not a fun fact, globally, every year, a third of what is made is thrown out in the first year it's made. It's made and it immediately is trash. So how does all of that intersect together? And I'd love to hear some thoughts on, do we think that brands have a social and moral responsibility to make clothes in the sizes of the people that exist on the planet?
Well, I have a little piece for that.
Sure.
most of the items that I make are with dead stock, right, or upcycled fabrics. One, they're great fabrics. So either they're vintage fabrics or they're currently just really high-end fabrics. And the focus for Sioux Rock Originals is to create what I'm considering calling future vintage. There is no real way for the sheen clothes to last for somebody's niece or somebody's grandkid, you know. There's nowhere for this next generation or two generations to shop for a size 26 fabulous cashmere, any of that. So for me, I'm thinking that way. I'm thinking it's going to be future vintage, the quality will be there, the manufacturing style will be there, the quality of fabric will be there, so that it can then in turn be passed on to the next generation and not be tossed.
I love that, and I love that term.
I was reading recently that Europe is working, who knows how long it will take, on passing some sort of sustainability law with clothing where they want the transparency on the label to say something like, how long will this last? And I thought that was really interesting, and you just spoke to that. I love the term future vintage. I think that's brilliant. I just find that really interesting. When I first launched, I remember my first factory, it was just you're still in the conversation phase, and they were like, okay, what do you want to base your size chart on? And I was like, what do you mean? I'm going to make my own. And they were like, no, like, what standard do you want to follow? And I was like, what standard? Like, I genuinely didn't understand. I was like, what do you mean? They're like, the plus size standard, like, and I was like, no, I'm going to create my own grade rule. I'm going to create my own size chart. I'm going to create, and they were like flabbergasted that, and like, it's almost like they want to stick to what exists because it's easier. And something that I hear a lot of is, oh, the brands can't because it costs more. They can't extend the sizes because it costs more. And bottom line, yeah, a 3X will take double the fabric of a small, but I'm really, really blessed. I haven't had one factory try to charge me a penny more. Almost, I think they're embarrassed to even ask. It would just be a ridiculous ask because it's for a person, But I have actually come across a couple brands where they charge more for the larger sizes, and it's mind-boggling, but it does happen.
They got to switch their costing.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. For a lot of people, it's like the bottom line of just the cost. For me, it's much more like the bottom line of how does it feel? What's the fabric like? Will it last? Does it wash well? Like, I typically wash most of my samples to see for myself. Yeah. God.
Great. Do you want to add anything, Ray?
Yeah, so the question is, do brands have a moral and social responsibility to make sustainable and extended size clothing, right?
To make
I just
clothing
wanna make
in
sure I'm getting-
direct relation to the people that actually exist on the planet.
That actually, yeah, okay. Because from a business standpoint, if your average size person is a 16, 18, which is the average size person, yeah, I mean, you're kind of not. It's not smart to not. I make clothing extra small through 6X, and then in number sizes 0 to up to 28. It's a lot of SKUs. It can get complicated, and I am one of the brands where the factory does charge us different prices for different sizes, but we would never pass that on to the customer. That would be really weird. Do people do that? Or is that
Yes.
okay. That's unfortunate. But so yeah, I don't know if they have. I do think that they have that people have a responsibility to do it. Can they? Like it's a big operation to make all of those sizes. When we first started doing extended sizing, I remember our first run before we released it to the public. We trusted the graders at our factory to extend the sizes, and you could probably guess what happened, which is that they just started grading, up. So we got garments back that were arms that were really, really long, and legs that were really long, and I had to be like, guys, that's not the way the body works. People's arms don't continue to grow. It doesn't work that way. So then we started fitting all of our pieces on different sized people. We got fit models, that, and created our own standard, as you said. We have our own standard of who are like our 1X, 2X, 3X, et cetera, 4X, 5X, 6X, and then up to 28 is. And it was really important to do that. And it was also really important to think about, when you have a size 3X or a size 4X, like how many bodies fit within that size? Because your size small, like there's a few bodies that fit in that size, but your size 3X, like there should really be like a 3X, like a 3.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then like a 4X, and then 0.1, like if we were to go, there should really be much more sizes. And it's unfortunate that I can't, create that new standard, but maybe someday that could exist. That would be wonderful. Because I see, my customers at times like struggling, like which one, and as a straight size person, I don't have that problem. It's controversial to say, but I understand why peers of mine don't make extended sizes because of, like their limitations, but I understand, but I also don't understand because I think it's exclusive to not make sizes above like an XL. It's like you're excluding people, like you're actively excluding people. And it doesn't make sense. And you're not making the money that you should make, honestly. Like you're cutting off like a huge demographic of people that have money to spend, and they want to wear clothing, they just like everyone else. And every single style that we make, we produce up to that size because we don't want to decide who gets to wear what. There are a lot of brands out there where they have only certain styles where they go up to their extended sized, and I always thought that was really strange because you're sort of making that decision for people, like what is attractive, or like what is like sexy, or like what do people want to wear. And my customers want to wear everything. They want to wear everything that I want to wear whatever they want, and who am I to tell them what to wear and what they should wear. So everything that I make, we make all the way up. So my size 0 and my size 6X, they can wear the same style and hang out together as they do, and send pictures through Instagram, and it's great. So yeah.
I wanted to jump in really quick and say the reason I brought up this size chart is because I think the problem goes to who decided that it ends at an XL or something. Like, I'm really not sure who decided we should figure that out. But I also wanted to speak quickly to your point about the 30% sort of ending up in the trash. I'm not sure if you mean overproduction or just the immediate pass through to the landfill. I wasn't sure, but
I think it's both.
Another choice I also made was you hear things from retail stores like, oh, if you don't hit a 40% sell through, you just kind of sell it off to the next. For example, we love Century 21, but that's their business, is buying off overproduction, and they really come and will offer you $5 a piece for something you've paid well over $100 for. But whatever, it's a business model, and for many businesses, they rely on being able to unload that inventory and to be able to take whatever they make and move on and make a new collection. And I decided really early that wasn't the business I wanted to be in, and I wanted to make things that surpassed a trend point, so that it was it will be sold for the next 3 years until it sells out. And that doesn't embarrass me. That makes me proud that it will continue to be offered until it's gone, because I'm able to offer that. And that for me is exciting, instead of just being like, shit, well, here's what didn't sell. How can I offload it as quickly as possible to just make a little bit more, to just make more to make more. What's the point then? You're just chasing, So I wanted to speak to that.
Yeah, that's a great point that I'm glad you added. Do you want to add?
Yeah, I do. I'd love to add something, because when I was thinking of the question before about responsibility, it's very easy, I'm sure, for any brand to, say very brusquely, my responsibility is make money. You know, I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm here to make some change and keep it moving. And I think what's glorious is the insistence and the staunch resistance to that being a reality by the public. By the public and the press and people in social media, getting their stories out to Business of Fashion, getting their stories out to Business Vogue, getting their stories out to the New York Times, saying, no, it is your responsibility. Yes, you won't be making a dime at this point because you're losing out, you know. And I think that's nice that we're at that crossroads, because even as recently as the past 4 years, the extended plus size community has been like, okay, great, it's nice that you figured out your curvy or whatever. We still can't find clothes.
Yep.
We still can't find a decent outfit to wear enough. Yep. And that forced, even though there was a backlash and a lot of businesses went backwards, they did, for a hot second, try to have more things in the store. And because that resistance from the public affected their bottom line, at least they didn't look great. You know, certain brands were used to looking great, and there was a whole onslaught of people like, you don't look great. And I'm telling people right now, that helps.
Absolutely. I want to do one more question, and then we'll have some time for a question and answer. But before I ask that question, I do want to just touch on when Wray was bringing up how there's so many different bodies that fit in a certain size. That's something that I'm absolutely obsessed with, and I do tons and tons of measurement research. I have for a very long time. I'm doing a research grant right now where I'm measuring hundreds of people, and I'll present that data in the spring of 2025.
I want that data.
Come to the presentation. But even before this grant, because it's really just a continuation of what I've already done, while, yes, it's absolutely true that there are many, many different kinds of people who fit in a size. That's true for everyone. I think sometimes brands will use it as a crutch of an excuse as why not to make clothes for plus-size people, as if they are amoebas and they cannot possibly figure it out. But every time I've done research into all size bodies, straight and plus, straight-size people are also actually between sizes. And it really is boils back to the fact that bodies in general, all bodies, are not created off of size charts. And we didn't create size charts to create good fit. We created size charts for mass production. So you can change your size chart as many times as you want. There's still going to be somebody that doesn't perfectly fit into your clothing. And the true solution to that is either tailoring after the fact or customizable options before the fact, smaller production, more made to order, shopping with a brand who the fit model fits your proportions, and so on and so forth. Just had to say that because it's my number one obsession. Okay, so the last question before we move on to Q&A is that as an inclusive and sustainable brand owner who talks about all these things all the time, a big question that I get from consumers and from followers of my company is, if I can do this as a small business owner, why aren't bigger brands doing it? Why don't brands care? And I always try my best to answer that, and I don't know if I ever really do a good job. So I'm just wondering if we had any thoughts on, you know, how can we get more companies, more business owners, more fashion designers to care about both inclusion and sustainability, and why don't they already?
I have Brooklyn answers.
Yeah,
I have
that's
Brooklyn
fine.
answers. The Brooklyn answer. I don't think anyone wants to sit at the fat girls table. They just don't. They don't want to sit at the fat. They can be cute, but nobody wants to sit at the fat girls table. And currently, because of the power of social media and the power of the individual voice finding its own voice through social media and TikTok, they've had to really address their own financial bottom line. That's my Brooklyn answer, right? You see it with them pulling back so quick. Even when money is involved, why you pull back so quick? I was like, we're back in like 5th grade. How did we get there? And more people are seeing plus-size people in positions of power and positions of authority, heads of state. You know, I'm thinking of the woman who's in Georgia. Forgive me.
Stacey Abrams?
Stacey Abrams. Come on. So, and she's not doing the flip-flop going back and forth. What people are seeing, you know, the woman who's Prime Minister of Barbados. So I mean, that's my thought, is that that's the residue. You know, that's the psychic residue that even cuts through the bottom line. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Because there's way too much money that can be made. And people are still, they're still making really poorly made clothing unnecessarily. Please. What do you think?
I think it's more mental than anything else. But I
Yeah.
also think it's like, oh, then it's more SKUs. And then it's like, oh, and it's more. It's not easy. You know, and, I've had this conversation. I've lost count of how many times I've tried to answer this question or sat around a table with partners or friends. It's a hard question to answer. And I wish people at bigger companies would answer it in a more
Yeah, not us.
straightforward way. But I also want to ask, is it that they don't want to, like, do people not want to sit at the faculty table, or do they not want to sit at the faculty table because society is making us feel like we shouldn't, and we'd actually be super comfortable sitting there, but, you know, something like that. But I think it's a lot more mental, and I remember first year of business as launching as a plus-size brand, how much education I had to do, spending so much time trying to explain the price point, because I didn't see why a higher price point was a problem if it was within reason. You know what I mean? If it matched the quality and the make and the lasting. It's definitely like how much work you have to do to convince someone that it's okay to spend money on a body that might not change next year. Now we're in
Yeah,
a
you're talking
different,
about talking to your customer, right?
or no, having
talking to your
to
customer.
to break it down and try to say it's okay to you know, invest in a piece that will last you, like you said, go off to your niece or your nephew, yeah.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting question. I'm thinking about it from more of like a financial and business end, because I had to do a lot of fundraising. I had to talk to a lot of people to start my brand, to get it going, to like turn it into a multi-million-dollar business. And you know, I had to talk to, you know, I had to convince people like, hey, why should you loan us this loan? Why should you invest in my brand? And, you know, it was always this fear, like, you know, you're making all these SKUs and all of these sizes. Does that mean that you're going to have a lot of dead stock? Like, you know, what's going on? And I would just, you know, I'd point to like, well, Old Navy is a really good example. In 2022, they launched extended sizes. They didn't do a lot of research, and they didn't do their curve right. They didn't know their customer. They didn't introduce it slowly. And so when you're at that scale, I think they lost something like, I think it was about 12% of their business they lost, like launching their extended size, not ordering enough, and then having like all of these leftover sizes because they didn't do it right. But when you're at my size and you're at my scale, you can iterate and you can figure it out. You can figure out, you know, like we have sell-through reports. We know what sizes are selling, like, you know, where our customer is, like where the curve is, like how it goes up and down. It changes. Sometimes it changes from style to style. This is the perspective I can offer. I can't speak to why, you know, I have a lot of friends who are extended size who have told me why they think that brands don't make more extended sizes. But this is what I can offer, just, you know, as a straight size person making all of these different sizes, that you can do it, but you have to start small. If I were to grow into a company the size of Old Navy, I'd probably be doing really well because I understand my customer and I know exactly what sizes to order for, you know, for my SKUs. I'd be killing it. They should have hired me when things went sour and when they went south. They fired their CEO at that time, you know. But if I iterate and I lose a few $1,000s because I didn't make the right decision, it's a big difference than if a big gigantic oligopoly iterates and they lose $9 million. You know.
So I have a question for you, Ray, based on the people that you've met. do you find that maybe the businesses are impatient? Because it would take a little bit, I'm just curious, I'm not a forced answer, but are they impatient, or did they want the returns quicker, or, I don't know, you might know better than I do.
Yeah, I think that, yes, I think that they don't realize the amount of research and the amount of data that goes into making all of those sizes and making sure you get it right. And you're not left with dead stock, because that's a real serious problem for any brand. But yeah, I think that not doing the proper research, not understanding, not talking to people that are the size, of your customer, not getting their perspective, not understanding, not connecting with that community. Like, you need to know your customer. If you're making clothing, that's a certain limited size range, and then you want to extend that size range, you really need to understand your customer just like you understand your straight size customer. You need to understand your plus size customer too, and what they want and what they're asking for, and what they need. Yeah, I think it is a little bit of impatience, for sure.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you mentioned that. And I think we'll pause there before we swap over to the Q&A, so we have time for folks to ask some questions. But yeah, I think we see that so often with big brands, is like when they get social media bullied into making a few plus sizes that they don't actually really want to make. They don't put it in that effort. They don't hire plus size influencers. They don't do that research. They don't look at measurement data. And then when it doesn't sell, they go, the customer's just not there.
They're like,
She's
we'd rather
just not
go back
ready
to what we were doing before. Let's just, why
Right,
did we
exactly.
take that,
Yep,
jump?
yep, totally. And they put the blame on the consumer instead of on themselves, which is really unfortunate. Okay, so we're going to pop over to Q&A. If you have a question, please raise your hand, and we'll ask you to come to this standing mic so that everyone can hear you and the video can hear you. Anyone want to be first? Sure.
Hi, so I wanted to ask, my topic ties a little bit to the last discussion you guys had. I wanted to ask, what do you think about the future of...
Sorry, I'm just making sure that your mic gets turned on.
Okay.
I'd motioned.
Is it?
Oh, there you go. Okay.
So I wanted to ask, what do you think about the future of size-inclusive market in general? Because for me personally, I think back to my parents, because both of them are plus size, and as far as I remember, we never had the money to shop to shop designer or to shop small business, which is really expensive where I'm from. So it would end up with both of my parents wearing the same clothes for 10 years, and my mother never being able to find any pants that would fit her or that would look good on her. So is there a future for plus sizing in mass market, or also maybe small businesses will expand in this direction? So just what do you think will happen in the future to plus sizes?
Thank you, Kay.
So in the future, I think
the Brooklyn answer.
the Brooklyn answer. It's gonna grow. I think that plus sizes are definitely going to grow. I don't think they're going to be mass market, because it goes back to the conversation I was having about sustainability. That's a real issue with people and their funds. I can't get mad at somebody getting Shein, because that's what they have. Klarna came in, and Klarna, if people don't know, it's a payment play. It's like layaway. It's old-fashioned layaway, where you can pay a little bit, but then you have to have a credit card in order to use Klarna, But I think there are going to be, just like there are extraordinary plus-size designers on the regular runways, there are going to be some innovative models, because it seems to me that the people who are independent designers who are doing plus-size clothing really care about their customer. There have been look at Universal Standard. Universal Standard was the first ones I ever heard of. Was look, I know how you going back and forth. Just give me everything you got. You were 16 one day, you were 18. Just bring it back. I got you. I've never heard of that before. So people are going to be creative enough to think about their customer. At least it's been happening. And it's been happening with people, not just, myself, I'm here, but it's been happening with people who are fully funded, creating new ways for folks to be able to have access to larger clothing. I've been thinking about crowdfunding ideas, you know, amongst customers for folks who are 7 and 8X. Okay, maybe I can't do a 7, 8X, but maybe people can do a, not a GoFundMe, but what do they call it? No, it's
Mutual
when
aid?
people, mutual aid, where folks can do a mutual aid and it's part of your business model, where you could do a mutual aid for people who are 7X or something if it's a special event. I think people are creative enough right now with finances to come up with better models, and I'm sure it's going to be 2,500 times better in 5 or 10 years.
And the actual stat is that
These are just ideas,
yeah,
you
yeah, yeah,
know,
no, for sure.
yeah.
Plus sizes are growing twice as fast as
Yeah.
straight sizes are. So we are moving in the right direction. And like, if you look back even 10, 12 years ago, I mean, whoo, we are light years away from where we were there. So hopefully in 10,
Light
12
years.
years from now, you know, we won't need to have this conversation.
I do think we're in a.
Big,
Go
just
ahead.
this is quick. With big box brands, I just think on one level, certain brands aren't going to change what they do. They'll do the same corny clothes. But then on another level, folks like Walmart will do those collaborations. And that'll grow, you know. And where 4X was big for them, maybe in another 10 years, 6X will be like, oh, that's regular. Because it's people asking for it.
Just more of the same. I was going to say definitely light years away, but I think we're in a risk-averse climate for the, you know, the short time. And I think once we get past that, I do think there's going to be another big push, another big jump, another big fight for inclusion that's long overdue. Can I ask where you grew up or where?
I'm originally Russian, but my parents, me and my parents, we both, three of us, we moved to Europe like I think like 3 years ago, and it's still the same size grid all over Europe, which is why I'm talking about it. The thing is, my parents, I don't think they would be considered plus size by American standards. By European standards, they are plus size. My mother cannot find a pair of pants that like looks good because all of them are like either too tall because they made it, like you said before, they made it for like, I mean, not that non-existent people, but people that do not represent the size. Like, I don't know, 2.5 meters tall. Like, this is not the size. So yeah, I feel like that's not related to the topic specifically, but I feel like European size grid is much more sized down than the American one, and it's even harder.
I just appreciate you sharing it. It just proves that it's a global problem. I know as a plus size consumer, I was going to say before I started the brand, I would rely on things like trips or vacation to be able to hope that the city or the country I was going to might have one small boutique in the corner of the street that might carry an XL or a double XL. So yeah, definitely a global problem.
I can't speak to whether or not it is a real shot in the dark because we've got brands that are just like eliminating sizes left and right. Like we've got H&M, they're pulling out of fast fashion and they're going to re-enter into contemporary, which is our price point. It's a wild ride right now. But what I can say is that, you know, companies should, even if anything, just from a financial standpoint, like it's a no-brainer. Like we're doing well. Like we sell just as many straight sizes as we do extended, sometimes more extended. But yeah, it would be a shame for people to not do it. One of the reasons why we do it is we want to be an example to show people, and one of the reasons why I'm here at this panel today is just to talk about the success of the business and doing all of those sizes and how it's okay and you can do it. It's good. It's not scary. It's not complicated. It doesn't even have to be a big statement. It can just be. It can just be a brand that carries all the sizes. Like no politics, nothing. Just simply that. And I think if brands start thinking that way, like if they, you know, if you're graduating and you start a company and you're thinking about, you know, making a brand, just think about making as many sizes as you can, you know, going up as far as you can, because you will sell them and it will be okay. And it's not hard, it's not complicated. And, you know, you don't have to have a backstory. It can just be about accommodating the customers that want to buy to buy your clothing.
Yeah. And if you can only make one size, make the size for the average size person. Thank you, Kay.
Totally.
Thank you for the responses. Hopefully, some of the changes will occur. Otherwise, I'm doing the brand specifically in my mother's size and nothing else.
Thank you, Kay. Another question? Ari?
Hello. So first of all, I just want to say you all look absolutely fabulous. So my question is kind of about like transparency from brands. Often when I'm online, I'm noticing on their website, they will have an X over the items that are certain sizes and above, and they never, ever, ever restock them. Now, is this sustainability or is this a nod towards performative inclusion?
Wow.
Both. I think for some, I can speak, maybe, I don't want to speak for others, but I think some people order less of the larger sizes as a trial, so it does quickly sell out. But I know for a fact that sometimes it's just a tactic, so good for recognizing. I always wonder the same thing, because they seem to go quick, but then you'll keep checking, and then a year later you're like, did it never come, you know? But I'll sign up for a wait list and never get an email, and then you're like, okay, maybe that's...
I'm not going to name names, but it's...
Say their
I
name.
so
Say
badly
their
want to,
name.
but I'm not going to. But
We're all sworn
yeah,
to
it's
secrecy.
I know for a fact that this is a thing that other brands do, and I know which brands do it. I know a lot of people in the industry. I've been in this industry for a long time, and I have a lot of peers, big and small. But yeah, they will purposely not order as many sizes, as many extended sizes as they should, knowing that there's demand. And they will also produce up to an XL and then just X out those sizes as if they've sold out, but they're not. They were never available in the first place. That is a real thing that happens. Sorry for the bummer answer.
The
but
infuriating
that's,
answer.
yeah.
Wait, can I ask a follow-up question on that? Is there
Sure.
any standard of accountability on that? You know, if you are marketing that you are doing something, but then you're not actually doing it, like how are you as a business not being legally held accountable?
There should be accountability for that, and there should be transparency for that. You know, I don't know why I don't know why there's not, and I don't have an answer to it, but it is really unfortunate.
Something like that would be handled by the FTC. I went to a panel last Sustainability Week with a lawyer from the FTC, and it was about sustainability, so about like greenwashing. But I've thought about that so many times. You know specifically that I rant on the internet about saying, oh, we make lots of people know, that we make sizes for everybody. We make sizes for all bodies, and they don't actually mean those words. And I would love to see those companies held accountable to saying things that are not true, because that is false advertising. But I think, lawsuits are expensive and hard and tough, so it really would need to be a big collaborative effort with a lot of tangible proof to make it happen.
They'd have to, like, how do you prove that? And go digging through somebody's paperwork to find that it's not true. Yeah. But that's
Yeah, everybody sign up now. No, I did hear, I talked to a lawyer about it actually one time, and they talked about how the biggest obstacle in their mind was coming up with the damages, right? So like how do you prove like loss of money? So they were coming at it from, I'm a company who does actually make clothes for everyone. So I could sue as a company saying these other companies are lying and saying that they do what I do, and because they're lying, consumers are not going to believe me because so many other people have lied to them. So I have lost money. And I hadn't even thought about it that way. I was thinking about it as a consumer, not as a business owner. But sometimes it's truly just about like proving damages and collateral.
I would encourage you to send an email and ask. I'd love to see what response you got.
You know
Where'd that
what?
size 16 go? Where'd that 2X go? Hello?
Yeah,
We waiting.
Better Business Bureau and FTC, here I come.
It's almost like they do want to sit at the table, you know? So it's like the joke's on them.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ari. Another question over here?
Hi. My question is kind of in regards to that fact that you threw out about a third of clothing being thrown out within the first year. How do you, as business owners, react to a rent-based clothing model more than an owning-based clothing model? Because I know that even me, myself, as someone who fluctuates with their weight quite a bit, or even like mothers and maternity clothing, there are clothes that you buy that you don't need. Like, that you need for like 6 months, a day, and then you never wear again.
I can speak to that. We currently wholesale to Newly, which is a clothing rental site. So that's the way that we tackle that. Thinking about like renting clothing. It's not our business model, but I think it's a good business model. It's a sustainable model. But yeah, it's not everyone's reality, but it is something that I think is important to do. And if it makes sense, it makes sense. I feel like I feel like Newly owes me for this one because I'm plugging them. I'm like, Newly, go. But yeah, that's. And I think Newly does very well with the extended size, from what I have heard, with the extended size market. I don't know if it's for that reason, and maybe that's for other people to answer.
I think it's a brilliant idea. I don't know how, it can be sustainable. I don't know that it always is. And I remember reading something last year, I believe in Business of Fashion, that I think it's a great option when they offer, I'm not talking about Newly specifically, but the rental model. It's a brilliant model if you think about it, ultimately because the consumer also has the choice to keep the item. And that's a win on both sides for someone to find something and say, oh, I actually love it enough to keep, because that's the goal. You want to love what you wear and keep it for a long period. But then I think they also do contribute to the landfill problem, because that's what I was reading about in this particular article, that the rental model isn't always sustainable. And it's sort of like there's sort of a problem with everything if you're, I don't want to be negative, but it's hard not to be when you're like, oh, well, then a lot still goes to waste, because what if 300 people did wear those 300 pieces and didn't buy them? Where does that go after the trends pass and 2 years pass? And I'm curious if they are transparent. But I think Newly's great. I think it's awesome. They have great brands.
And I just want to add quickly that that stat that I gave, it's not necessarily speaking about individual consumers who bought something and then 10 months later it doesn't fit them anymore and they try to do something with it, right? It's more about clothes that are being made and never sold, or made and they overproduce and then they're getting rid of it, etc. And I think from a consumer standpoint, if you buy something and you have no use for it any longer, just think for 5 more minutes about, what can I do with this now, instead of putting it in a trash can, right? Because there's so many different options nowadays. There is this newer business that has a bag called the Trashy, and you can pay for a bag to recycle your clothes. So there's a lot more options than just putting it in the trash if you're on a consumer level and you're concerned about that. Thank you for your question.
I think also that if you invest in fashion that has a brand or that has a name, that has good quality clothing, you can resell it, and there's a big resale market. We have a big resale market, but on our website you can actually sell your clothes on our website. I don't know if anyone knows that, but yeah, it's a program that we do so that people can use our platform to sell their old Wray pieces back. And I think it's important because fast fashion, it's no one's like, I want to buy that Forever 21 thing, on the on secondary market, I gotta get it, but if you build a brand and you build quality, you have that secondary market appeal, and you're not throwing clothes away. Just something that I thought I would mention.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you for your question. Let's maybe do one more, if there is one more. Or maybe there is no more and we're done.
Thank you for coming, guys.
Okay, we're done. Oh, wait. Yeah, small one.
Another full question.
Okay.
I'm just wondering, are any of you guys wearing today the pieces from your brands?
I am.
Okay.
Yes.
One, yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
2 samples.
Everything that I wear, I made. So this particular dress is not a style that I used to sell, but all my clothes I make. So technically, yes. Yeah, Sue.
What is the biggest challenge you faced in your work that you want to share with students that, watch out for this?
Good final question, Sue.
Make sure you find your customer. Make sure you really understand what customer you want. One way you can do it is by really talking to people about why they buy what they buy. You know, not necessarily what they'd like you to make, not necessarily what colors they like, but ask them to take you on a journey of when they bought something. What did you buy? What was the last thing you bought that was full price? That's going to give you information that you need. Was it an outfit? Who were you with? Were you with family? Were you with friends? Were you at the mall? Were you buying it online? This is the kind of seed information you need to really understand where people are at and why they're buying what they're buying. Get your customer straight, and not necessarily from your imagination, which is a cruel thing to ask. Who's your customer? Don't do that. Really talk to people and really identify, kind of people's pain points and how they shop. Because I think all three of us, I'm kind of the newest on the block, but these two women have discovered not only their customer, but how their customer shops and what their pain points. And they've fed into that, and that made their business model successful. Having, who would have known that having visibly plus-size models on your thing was really the thing to push your sales over? Who would have known being able to sell your items on the same platform would push the sales over? It's not just the clothes. So really know, what I'm saying, the person, and listen very carefully to who they are. Listen to people, everyday people. What are they doing and how are they shopping? And ask for those stories. Because if you're a creative, those stories are going to feed you the insight that you need to then understand, okay, if I want to do lingerie, this is what's happening. If I want to do evening, if I want to do menswear, this is what's happening with men as they're shopping. It makes a huge difference.
I love
That's
that,
what helped
Sue.
for me. If that,
I love that. I think there's endless business challenges, but I'm going to go with a more personal one. I think like imposter syndrome, and just like waking up every day and continuing to do something that you love to do, which can be glamorous and also not glamorous at all. And just like believing in yourself, and like making it okay to just be yourself. And did I answer that right? You know what I mean. Sometimes in this business, whether you fashion or not, just having a small business, you question everything. For me in particular, I don't have a partner, so it's really a lot on my own shoulders that at the end of the day, I sometimes wonder what it would be like to have a partner, but I've grown a lot of confidence from being able I can make these decisions on my own, and I'm actually incredibly capable and strong, and that's how I've gotten this far, which sounds corny, but it feels good to remind yourself that every once in a while, and especially when you're coming out of school, you're going to be questioning. You're going to be questioning a lot, and that's when you have to start answering for yourself and being like, no, I can, and no, I want to, and why do I want to, and remind yourself every day that it's not linear and it's not easy per se, but...
You have a challenge, Ray?
Yeah. It was the first 5-6 years were really rough. If you are going to school for design, find your counterpart in business. If you're going to school for business and you want to do a fashion company, find your counterpart in design. Some people are blessed to have both. I'm not so much. I am and I am not, but understand your weaknesses and understand your strengths, and then surround yourself with the people that supply those strengths where you have weaknesses, so that you can excel, propel forward, create a business. Look for funding. Just